Hi, Aqua Roomers. It's time for chapter reading. Now, yesterday we read that the sled was finished, and this is Pa's pa, Laura and Mary's grandpa, when he was a little boy with his brothers James and George. Oh, they had no time to work on the sled until Saturday afternoon. Then they worked on it as fast as they could, but they didn't get it finished till the sun went down Saturday night. After the sun went down, they could not slide downhill, not even once. That would be breaking the Sabbath. So they put the sled in the shed behind the house to wait until Sunday was over. All the 2 long hours in church the next day, while they kept their feet still and their eyes on the preacher, they were thinking about the sled. At home, while they ate dinner, they couldn't think of anything else. After dinner, their father sat down to read the Bible, and Grandpa and James and George sat as still and as nice on their bench with their catechism, but they were thinking of the sled. The sun shone brightly, and the snow was smooth and glittering on the road. They could see it through the window. It was a perfect day. Oh, they wanted to go sliding downhill. They looked at their catechism and they thought about their new sled, and it seemed Sunday would never end. After a long time, they heard a snore. They looked at their father, and they saw that his head had fallen back against his chair, and he had fallen asleep. Then James looked at George, and James got up from the bench and tiptoed out of the room through the back door. George looked at Grandpa, and George tiptoed after James. And Grandpa looked fearfully at their father, but on tiptoe he followed George, and they left their father snoring. They took their new sled and went quietly up to the top of the hill. They meant to slide down just once, and then they would put the sled away and slip back to the bench before their father woke up. James sat in the front of the sled. Ooh. So here they are, tiptoeing away, and their dad is asleep. Oh, so this is the littlest. And that is Pa's pa when he was a little boy, Laura and Mary's grandpa. Okay. James sat in the front of the sled, then George, and then Grandpa, because he was the littlest. The sled started at first slowly, then faster and faster. It was running, flying down the long steep hill, but the boys dared not shout. They must slide silently past the house without waking their father. There was no sound except the little whir of the runners on the snow and the wind rushing past. And then, just as the sled was swooping toward the house, a big black pig stepped out of the woods. He walked into the middle of the road and just stood there. The sled was going so fast it couldn't be stopped. There wasn't time to turn it. The sled went right under the hog and picked him up with a squeal. Whee! He sat down on James and kept on squealing, long and loud and shrill. Squee! Squee! They flashed by the house. The pig sitting in front, then James, then George, then Grandpa. Oh, and then they couldn't stop. They flashed by the house. Grandpa was standing in the doorway looking at them. They couldn't hide. There was no time to say anything. Down the hill they went, the hog sitting on James, squealing all the way. At the bottom of the hill, they stopped. The hog jumped off James and ran away into the woods, still squealing. The boys walked slowly and solemnly up the hill. They put the sled away. They sneaked into the house and slipped quietly to their places on the bench. Their father was reading the Bible. He looked up at them without saying a word. Then he went on reading, and they studied. But when the sun went down and the Sabbath was over, their father took them out to the woodshed and tanned their jackets. First James, then George, then Grandpa. They got a spanking. So you see, Laura and Mary, Pa said, you may find it hard to be good, but you should be glad that it isn't as hard to be good now as it was when Grandpa was a little boy. Did little girls have to be as good as that? Laura asked, and Ma said it was harder for little girls because they had to behave like little ladies all the time, not only on Sundays. Little girls could never slide downhill like boys. Oh. Little girls had to sit in the house and sew on samplers. Now, run along and let Ma put you to bed, said Pa, and he took the fiddle out of its box. Laura and Mary lay in their trundle bed and listened to the Sunday hymns, for even the fiddle must not sing the weekday songs on Sundays. Rock of Ages, Cleft for Me, Pa sang with the fiddle, and then he sang, Shall I be carried to the skies on flowery beds of ease, while others fought to win the prize and sailed the bloody seas? Laura began to float away on the music, and then she heard a clattering noise, and there was Ma by the stove getting breakfast. It was Monday morning, and Sunday would not come again for a whole week. That morning, when Pa came into breakfast, he caught Laura and said he must give her a spanking. First he explained today was her birthday. She would not grow properly next year unless she had a spanking. And then he spanked so gently and carefully it did not hurt a bit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 he counted. 1 spank for each year, and the last one, big spank to grow on. So Laura is now 5 years old, and 6 would be 1 to grow on. So when I was a little girl, that happened to me on my birthday, and it was pretend and it was fun, and it wasn't really spanking, and everybody was excited because it was a birthday. Then Pa gave her a little wooden man he had whittled out of a stick to be company for Charlotte. Ma gave her 5 little cakes, 1 for each year that Laura had lived with her pa. And Mary gave her a new dress for Charlotte. Mary had made the dress herself when Laura thought she was sewing on her patchwork quilt. And that night, for a special birthday treat, Pa played Pop Goes the Weasel for her. He sat with Laura and Mary close against his knees while he played. Now watch, he said. Watch, and maybe you can see the weasel pop out this time. And he sang, a penny for a spool of thread, another for a needle. That's the way the money goes. Laura and Mary bent close, watching, for they knew now was the time. Pop! And Pa's little finger on the string. Goes the weasel, sang the fiddle, plain as plain. But Laura and Mary hadn't seen Pa's finger make the string pop. Oh, please, please do it again, they begged him. Pa's blue eyes laughed, and the fiddle went on singing. All around the cobbler's bench, the monkey chased the weasel. The preacher kissed the cobbler's wife. Pop goes the weasel. They hadn't seen Pa's finger that time either. He was so quick, they could never catch him. So they went laughing to bed and lay listening to Pa and the fiddle singing. two big bears. Oh, I got to show you the picture. I have to look at both bears because it's two different stories. Okay? Ready? Then one day, Pa said spring was coming. In the big woods, the snow was beginning to thaw. Bits of it dropped from the branches of the trees and made little holes in the softening snowbanks below. At noon, all the big icicles along the eaves of the little house quivered and sparkled in the sunshine, and drops of water hung trembling at their tips. Pa said he must go to town and trade the furs of the wild animals he had been trapping all winter. So one evening, he made a big bundle of them. There were so many furs that when they were packed tightly and tied together, they made a bundle almost as big as Pa. Very early one morning, Pa strapped the bundle of furs to his shoulders and started to walk to town. There were so many furs to carry, he could not take his gun. Ma was worried, but Pa said that by starting before sunup and walking very fast all day, he could get home before dark. The nearest town was far away. Laura and Mary had never seen a town. They'd never seen a store. They had never seen even two houses standing together. But they knew that in a town there were many houses and a store full of candy and calico and other wonderful things, powder, shot, and salt, and store sugar. They knew that Pa would trade his furs to the storekeeper for all the beautiful things from town, and all day they were expecting the presents he would bring them. When the sun sank low above the treetops and no more drops fell from the tips of the icicles, they began to watch eagerly for Pa. The sun sank out of sight. The woods grew dark, and he did not come. Ma started supper and set the table, but he did not come. It was not time to do the chores, and still he did not come. Laura and Ma might come. Ma said Laura might come with her while she milked the cow. Laura could carry the lantern. So Pa still had not come. Laura put on her coat, and Ma buttoned it up, and Laura put her hands into her red mittens that hung by a red yarn string around her neck, while Ma lighted the candle in the lantern. Laura was so proud to be helping Ma with the milking. She carried the lantern very carefully. Its sides were of tin, with places cut in them for the candlelight to shine through. When Laura walked behind Ma on the path to the barn, the little bits of candlelight from the lantern leaped all around her on the snow. The night was not yet quite dark. The woods were dark, but there was a gray light on the snowy path, and in the sky there were a few faint stars. The stars did not look as warm and bright as the little lights that came from the lantern. Laura was surprised to see the dark shape of Suki the brown cow standing at the barnyard gate. Ma was surprised too. It was too early in the spring for Suki to be let out in the woods to eat grass. Oh my goodness. So we'll stop there, and tomorrow we'll find out what's going to happen. Very exciting. Thank you, Aqua Roomers. See you tomorrow for chapter reading.